So the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. Man, when this thing launched, the hype it was huge, right? This wasn't just some minor update. Everyone was calling it a total revolution for Royal Enfield. But now that the dust is settled, now that riders have put some serious miles on it, what's the real story? Does the reality actually live up to all that hype? Well, we've dug through a ton of long-term reviews and what actual owners are saying to figure out if this bike really stuck the landing.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at just how big a leap this bike is on paper. Then we get to the good stuff, that magic carpet ride everyone's talking about. But then, there's a turn. We've got to talk about the growing pains and the problems people are having. After that, we'll cover what it's really like to live with this thing day to day. And finally, we'll try to land on a verdict for what might be a bit of a flawed hero.
So to really get this new bike, you kind of have to remember the old one. The original Himalayan, people loved it for sure, but man, it was slow. It just ran out of puff on the highway, and the brakes, let's just say they kept you on your toes, and not in a good way. The new 450 though, it was designed from a blank slate to fix every single one of those issues.
So the promise here was huge, a total reimagining. I mean, think about it. What happens when a company takes a bike with a massive cult following and just throws the entire rulebook out the window? Well, you get what we're looking at here. One of the biggest, most dramatic jumps from one generation to the next that we've seen in, well, a really long time.
And just look at the numbers here. This shows you just how massive the change is. We're not talking about a couple of extra horsepower. We're going from around 24 to 40. That's a huge jump. And you're going from old school analog dials to this beautiful TFT display that even has Google Maps built in. But the real heart of it all is that brand new engine, the Sherpa 450. You got to remember, this is Royal Enfield's first ever liquid-cooled single. For them, this is a massive, massive deal, a total game changer.
Okay, so the specs are impressive, no doubt. But specs on a piece of paper don't tell the whole story, right? The real magic, the thing that made everyone fall in love with this bike, happens when you actually ride it. And we're not just talking about it being better. For a lot of people, this was a straight-up revelation.
Just listen to that quote for a second. Magical. He's not messing around. And that's coming from a guy who put 10,000 kilometers on the bike for his review. It's crazy, but pretty much everyone, from the big shot journalists to regular owners, agrees. The number one, most praised part of this bike, it's the suspension. Hands down. And it's not just the suspension either. The whole package just works. People are raving about the seat. It's super plush. The brakes actually give you confidence now. The power delivery is smooth and predictable right where you need it. And the ergonomics, you can sit on this thing all day long. It just feels so planted and stable. It's one of those bikes that kind of flatters you, It makes you feel like a better rider, whether you're on the pavement or hitting the trails.
Okay, but this is where the story takes a pretty sharp and honestly disappointing turn. Because as brilliant as this bike is to ride, a completely different story starts to unfold when you talk about what it's like to actually own it.
And, despite all the incredible new tech and shiny engineering, a familiar story starts to pop up. It's something we've seen with other first-gen Royal Enfields. Maybe it's just the price you pay for taking such a huge leap into new territory, but it's a story about quality control, or lack thereof, about things breaking, about reliability just not being there.
And look, we're not talking about one or two random problems here. If you spend any time on the owner forums, you see a clear pattern. The fuel gauge going haywire, ABS sensors failing, clutch switches giving up. That little joystick on the handlebar? Yeah, that's a big one. And it gets worse. We're talking about really serious stuff too, like the entire computer, the ECU, failing, or the whole electrical harness needing to be ripped out and replaced.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? An owner in Spain, his brand new bike with only 8,000 kilometers on it, has been stuck at the dealer for 7 weeks waiting for a new wiring harness. 7 weeks! That's not just a little hiccup. That is a massive problem, and it really makes you wonder about the quality of the parts they're using or what's going on at the factory. And what makes all of this 100 times more frustrating is that the service centers seem to be totally overwhelmed. They're struggling to keep up. Owners are saying it can take weeks just to get a simple part like a clutch cable. The mechanics themselves are still learning the bike. They're literally having to get on video calls with the main office to figure out what's wrong. Can you believe that? One guy said he had to wait a whole month just for them to get permission to start fixing his bike. A whole month.
So, okay, what does this all mean for living with the bike day in, day out? Well, it really boils down to this constant back and forth. It's a series of trade-offs, really. You get this absolutely brilliant experience out on the open road,
But then you have to deal with all these frustrations pretty much everywhere else. And this table really lays it all out. On the one hand, the engine is amazing for touring. It'll just hum along at 110 kilometers per hour without breaking a sweat. But on the other hand, you get this annoying buzz through the handlebars and pegs once you get over 4,000 RPM. The comfort is top-notch for a long trip, but get stuck in city traffic and that engine will cook your legs. The big TFT screen with maps is awesome, but then the headlight is terrible and the stock windscreen does basically nothing. And yeah, it's missing that low-end chug the old bike had, so you find yourself shifting gears a lot more around town.
Now, let's talk fuel economy. Pretty much everyone agrees on this one. You're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 30 kilometers per liter in the real world. And honestly, for a bike with this much power, that's pretty good. With that big 17-liter tank, you're looking at a solid 400 kilometers of range before you need to start looking for a gas station, which is great for touring.
All right, so where does that leave us? What's the final verdict? Well, you can't just slap a good or bad sticker on the Himalayan 450. It's not that simple. It's a really complex bike with a ton of personality. And because of that, it puts a really clear but also a really tough choice in front of anyone who's thinking about buying one. And this is maybe the best way to understand what this bike is. Put it next to its biggest rival, the KTM 390 Adventure. The KTM, that's like an off-road racer. It's sharp, it's exciting, it's demanding, and it's built to go fast. The Himalayan, it's the Explorer. It's all about being smooth, stable, and comfortable over huge distances. It's just a different philosophy. They're not even trying to do the same thing, really.
And that really is the story of the Himalayan 450 in a nutshell. You have this motorcycle with genuinely world-class handling, comfort, and capability. It is an absolutely brilliant machine to ride. But, and it's a big but, it's being let down, at least for now, by what feels like a real gamble on its reliability and the whole service situation.
So I'm going to leave you with this question. We've established it's a fantastic machine, right? But it has a serious catch. So the question for you is, what do you value more? An absolutely incredible, top-tier riding experience, or the peace of mind that your bike is just going to work? When it comes to the Himalayan 450, you have to ask yourself, is the ride worth the risk?